Welcome to Transformative Principal, where you learn how to be a leader and not just a manager of a to-do list. I am your host, Jethro Jones. You can find me on Twitter at Jethro Jones. Your to-do list is a hungry monster that is never satisfied. For the last year and a half, I've helped principals get awards, get promoted, and find the time to do the work that really matters. I recently opened a new mastermind slot. Schedule a call with me and let's overcome the stressed and isolated principal position together. Go to the show notes for this episode at transformativeprincipal.org and click Schedule a Call with Jethro. Welcome to Transformative Principal. Today, I am excited to have Rachel Brown from Colorado on the program. Rachel, welcome to Transformative Principal.
I'm happy to be here.
I am happy to have you. You are a curriculum instruction and professional growth strategist, however you say that, for Douglas County School District in Colorado. Can you tell us first a little bit about what in the world that means?
What, the title doesn't explain itself? Okay, so we used to have a curriculum department and a PD department, and then we merged a few years ago. And during that merge, people were previously curriculum coordinators or PD coordinators, but we became curriculum and PD. And so instead of calling us curriculum and PD coordinators, we became curriculum instruction and professional growth strategists, because we didn't want to leave out the importance of instruction when it comes to curriculum.
Okay. Fascinating. I was in a position probably similar to yours where I was called an evidence-based specialist, and the department was the evidence-based learning department. And so that was what we had for a while there. And that was an interesting title, because we had to explain to everybody, well, it's the curriculum department.
Yeah,
because nobody knew what we were talking about. So, okay. Yeah. So you and I met at a conference in November in Denver for the Ed Elements put on the New Team Habits. And I wrote a little review on it on my blog at jethrojones.com. And it was a really great opportunity. And you and I met and we made a connection because you said that I looked like Patton Oswalt, which I have since learned I do. So still waiting for Patton to reach out and say, hey, twin brother, you can be a body double for me. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Who knows? When that happens, I'll be sure to let you know and give you credit for that. But we also learned some really cool things that were really important. And then we connected afterward. And one of the things that you wanted to talk about here on the podcast was the power in the missed opportunities. And I thought that as your response was really fascinating. So tell me a little bit about what that means, the power in missed opportunities.
Well, it's one of those that it's kind of twofold. In education, if you're a leader in a building, you have the ability through your interactions to really have that positive effect on climate and culture. But if you have too many missed opportunities with your staff, your climate and culture can be negatively affected by that. But then there's also the student side of that. And I feel that if we have too many missed opportunities with students, it can really impact their mental health in a negative way, because students should have a person that they can go to at every school. And too many missed opportunities means too many students who don't have that adult in their life. So that's kind of that twofold.
Yeah. So you have power to take those opportunities and you have power to miss those opportunities. And that seems like it puts a lot of pressure on people to make sure you never miss something, because you could destroy a kid. But I don't think that's exactly what you're saying. Can you elaborate on that piece a little bit?
Yeah. So even the opportunity of saying hello to a kid and making sure that every kid in your school has at least one adult who says hi to them on a daily basis, that is an example of not missing the opportunity. Because if there's a kid who is at a middle school and for 2 years, not a single teacher says hello to them in the hallway, that's a missed opportunity. That's a missed connection for that student. And there's so much power that we lose when we have those missed opportunities with our students. And so just having one person, I know of a school once that at the beginning of the year, and this is not the right way to think about it, but they essentially thought of the kids were all on cards, and each teacher had to take a kid until all of the cards were gone. And then the kids that they had in their hand were the kids that they needed to make sure on a daily basis they had an interaction with. That way they never had a missed opportunity. That way the kids knew that they cared, because we know that social emotional health is such a big concern right now for our students. I know, especially in Douglas County, we really feel that. And so too many missed opportunities with our students to make those connections can have that negative impact on them.
Yeah. And I think that that piece is really, really powerful because you gave a good example of an actual activity you can do to ensure that every kid has an adult. And one of the things that I just think is amazing is that when we involve every adult and not just the teachers in interacting with kids, it actually makes the number of kids we're working with even smaller, which is really amazing. So in my school, with all the teachers and all the aides and secretary and myself and the assistant principal and the counselors, we were able to get our class size when we had classes with all those people. We're able to get our class sizes down to 13 kids per teacher. And that's pretty amazing. I mean, that is powerful to be able to do that. And, people have different roles and other things to do. And so that can't be all the time. But if you can think like, can you handle like reaching out to 13 kids every day? I think you probably could, right? and
Right.
and it's not that difficult. So some of the things that we say and some of the things that we don't say have a really big impact on our culture. Can you talk a little bit about some of those experiences where you've seen things that people say and don't say having a big impact?
Yeah, my team is a great example. We've been through so much in the past 4 years, from two departments merging together to completely rebranding who we were as a department. We've had three different leaders in the past 4 years. And so we've had some turmoil as a group. And as a team, our emotional intelligence was pretty low. And we all will admit to that. And there were a lot of times when things went unsaid. And when those things were going unsaid, things festered inside. And there were conflicts that were arising because we didn't have the emotional intelligence as a team to address the elephant in the room. And so all of those missed opportunities of saying and, making positive presuppositions and assuming that someone didn't mean something negatively, we went down this spiraling path of dysfunction, and it became to the point that we were catty almost with each other. And we started doing a little bit of a turnaround, at least on my side, when I confronted with kindness. There's a difference between confronting and confronting with kindness. I confronted a few team members with kindness and said, "Hey, what's going on?" Instead of ignoring what was going on or pushing it aside, we confronted what we were feeling and we talked through it. And once we were able to talk through it, we realized that really it was a miscommunication, but we could have let it go on for 6 more months and continued on that path towards dysfunction. But we took the opportunity to have a conversation as adults and change the trajectory of where we were going as a department and as a team. Elena Aguilar has done a lot of work on the art of coaching teams, and she talks about emotional intelligence as a team. And that truly was the turning point for the emotional intelligence of our team. We just were not functioning, and there were so many missed opportunities to, turn the boat. We just weren't taking them, and we were letting the boat continue to go down the wrong path of dysfunction.
Yeah, I love that phrase of confronting with kindness. And I think that that is so powerful. Can you talk a little bit more about what confronting someone with kindness actually looks like?
Well, it's one of those that you have to get rid of your ego, and you have to assume positive presuppositions, and you have to go in not in a way that it comes off accusatory. To me, whenever I confront with kindness, I lay it on the line for myself, and I almost kind of open myself up like a book, and I lay myself out and say, this is what I'm struggling with. This is where I know that I'm probably failing as a team member, and almost showing that vulnerability can help to lower the barrier on the other side. You're having the confrontation, but it's not so accusatory towards the other side, because you're kind of showing your fallibility, and you're hoping that they meet you halfway, but you're not confronting them as an attack. And so to me, I always think you confront with kindness, in that it's not kind just to put it all out there and say, hey, you're doing something wrong. You put yourself on the table as well. You make it an equal playing field, not an attack.
Yeah, that reminds me of something that I haven't talked about for a while, but I have these communication cards that I put on my door to my office to help bridge the gap between, a supervisor and his team. And sometimes it can be intimidating to go and talk to your boss. No matter how good your relationship is, it can still be intimidating. And so I created these communication cards to help people know how to communicate better with each other. And so one of those is called the storyline card. And you use the storyline card when you have a story going in your mind about how a person is acting or behaving or what their motives are or anything like that. And it's a really powerful way to set it up so that that person can be successful and still have dignity and maintain their right to feel and act the way that they do. And what you do is you say, I have a storyline. And for me, when I teach this to my staff, I say, when you give me the storyline, it is your permission to say anything that you want to me. And I'm not allowed to get upset about it. And I hold myself very true to that standard, because it's so important to me that people are able to express what they want. And so when they have that storyline, it's the story that's going on in their head. And the easiest example is you walk by your boss and your boss looks at you and doesn't smile or acknowledge you, but just looks at you and you feel like, oh no, I'm in trouble. And I think just about everybody has felt that way. And so what I do then is I say, if you have that experience and you feel like I'm mad at you or you feel like I'm disappointed, you bring me the storyline, and then you say, I have a storyline. You tell me what it is. And then I promise that I will tell you how I'm feeling and whether or not you're right on or not. And 99 times out of 100 that's been used, the person was totally wrong. They thought they knew what was going on, but they totally didn't. And so I use that storyline card to help people share that story and to be able to have that confronting with kindness, so that they can say, this is what I'm experiencing and this is how it feels. And I need to know where I stand. And I've done that with my bosses. And let me tell you, when you are able to have that kind of relationship where you can go in and say, this is what I'm feeling and all that stuff, it is really, really powerful, and definitely has improved relationships and made things better because we're able to have that conversation. And I just appreciate how you are bringing it up and talking about it as confronting with kindness. I think that's a really powerful way to look at it, because we don't want to be confrontational, but sometimes we need to be, to figure out what's really going on.
If we don't confront the subject, we can just fester.
Right. And that's so damaging. What are the harmful effects of letting things just fester that you've seen in your work?
Well, I think for us, if we were to look at where my team was when we were letting things fester, we weren't producing our best work. We, in team meetings, because of us letting things fester and we weren't approaching things, our team meetings would be this spiral of almost negativity, and you would leave the team meeting and you would just be drained of all of your energy. And it was one of those that someone would pose an idea and another person would instantly argue it, instead of pausing, paraphrasing, listening, understanding, or seeking for clarification. It instantly went to, yeah, but that's not going to work. And so all of these creative ideas that we could have come up with in, I'd say, during probably the 4-month time span that we were spiraling, we lost all those creative ideas because in our team meetings, we always knocked them down, or someone would knock them down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably the biggest loss that we had because of our inability to, confront each other with kindness, our inability to take those opportunities and make a change. We lost the opportunity to actually make change within our district for a few months because we weren't effective as a team.
Yeah. And the ramifications of that can be large. And the way that I think about that is that you only have so many days with a student in front of you. And then they're moving on to the next grade or the next class or the next school or whatever the case may be, or they eventually graduate or drop out. Right. And so that's where I feel a sense of urgency that if we don't get this stuff right as soon as possible, these kids leave our school and don't have our best selves in front of them. And that's where I
Right.
feel a sense of urgency come from that. What's your take on that?
It actually makes me think back to one of my first jobs as a teacher. I was at a high school, and none of the kids really knew who the principal was.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't pick him out in a lineup. But then a few years later, we had a new principal, and there was a shift in the student body at that time. They felt the love from that principal. They felt empowered by that principal. And the entire climate and culture of the student body, as well as the staff, completely shifted under that new principal to the point that they've done amazing things, and they continue to do amazing things even though he's no longer there. But he started them on this path of positive climate and culture and banding together as a community. And him just being visible and present and giving kids high fives and saying hello to them in the hall and doing all of those things made an impact on those students' lives. And they can all look back and tell you exactly who their principal was, and they can tell you exactly how he behaved and exactly all of the amazing things that he did for them in school. And he was there for every kid in that school. And there's so much power in even one person having that positivity, but he created that infectious atmosphere. So more teachers had that positive effect on kids. And I may not be fully answering where we were going, but I was just thinking about that because it truly made me think how he shifted that school and how that had an enormous impact on those kids. But he chose to do that. He chose to be present. He chose to be out in the halls. He chose to make that impact and really change that community.
Yeah. And, we have people who are principals and in other leadership positions where they may not want to be out in front and, be that, the one who's out there like dancing with the little boombox thing out in front of the school at drop off and stuff. That may not be your personality, but that one thing doesn't have to be, define who you are. I think the commonality with what you were talking about is that you don't let go of the opportunities where you can make a difference in the way that you can make that difference. And that's the key piece is using your own strengths and your own abilities to do things that are really amazing. And each different person has their own skill set in that area. And you shouldn't feel like you need to shy away because you're not that kind of principal. You should find your own skill set and emphasize that.
Right. Because you can make an impact in students' lives and your staff's lives just by taking those opportunities, whatever best fits who you are. But you have to take the opportunities in order to make that impact.
Yeah. So this has been a great conversation. The last question I like to ask is, what is one thing that a principal can do this week to be a transformative leader like you, Rachel?
Oh, well, I think if, thinking about where we are in the year, this is a rough time for some kids. For some kids, they don't always have an amazing place to go home, or they may not have the food on the table at home. So I guess for me, it's how can you make that, make a little adjustment at your school to make your school feel like the safest home for some of those kids who need that safe place and that safe home. So just doing something to make the school more inviting and almost that safe haven for some of our kids who need a safe haven at times. And I don't have you definitely should try this, because I think it depends on your community what can make it feel like a safe haven, but making that place for the kids that they feel comfortable and they feel home and they look forward to coming.
I think that's great advice. Very, very important. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for being part of Transformative Principal. You can follow Rachel on Twitter at Rachel D. Brown. And thank you very much again for being part of Transformative Principal.
Thank you.